Now, a podcast designed to help you build business connections and, of course, create opportunities. I'm Lee Foster of Revitalize Connecting People, and with me are the most fabulous ladies over in the Netherlands, the co-hosts that are Julie Taylor and Louisa Stewart of Blue Ninja Business Support. Louisa or Julie, over to you.
Thank you, Lee. We've set up Network Now to help network well, to build connections, create opportunities, share knowledge, and receive trusted advice from networking business professionals across the globe. We hope that you've been following us online and on Anchor FM and Spotify. So today we're going to wrap up on the week, and we've had some great conversations this week.
Oh, absolutely. And just as a reminder of our fantastic guests we've been chatting to this week, thank you to Kristine Tudhope from South Africa, Brent Edwards from Canada, and our guest yesterday was Robert Hercus, who spoke to us from Scotland, but he's actually moved to the United Arab Emirates, the UAE. So they all had such fantastic, amazing insights and perspectives about networking with the goal of having an international impact. So Julie, would you like to start with one lesson that you learnt from the discussion this week?
Yeah, great guests. Really enjoyed this week. It's been so much fun. I think my biggest takeaway has been value. It's about demonstrating value, providing value, and telling people your story. So I think that's been the biggest thing. Because if you're starting a new network, if you're moving and people don't know you, you're going to need to start at the beginning. And you're an expert in your field, so tell people what you can do to help them.
Mm,
Yeah,
true.
great point.
And I think every one of them made that point throughout their conversations. The value and trusting what you're worth. I think Kristine said that. Um, you know, you've got to really embrace who you are. I mean, even Robert said that yesterday. And you start from a point wherever you are, and you just start building.
I think one of the big things as well we spoke about is actually knowing who your connections are in the area. Sometimes you've got either one connection that can actually introduce you to somebody. As a big thing for me is actually, do you know who, as I called yesterday, we spoke about the tribe. Do you know your tribe? And especially if there's one that's in that sort of tribe of your network, do they have connections in that area that you're moving into? Which Robert talked about yesterday as well,
Mm.
actually identifying somebody. And it's just as simple as buying a cup of coffee for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Robert's coffee budget's probably gone up a bit lately, but but it's a great way to start, isn't it? Start small, get to know a few people, and let that snowball effect happen.
Yeah.
Um, there's really no other way to really start when you're in another country or you're trying to network in another capacity than you're used to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Christine said friends before money.
I
So
love
it
that.
always a
Yeah.
good one.
Exactly.
But I know she really had to work on her confidence. And I think that's something that we talked about all week and we do in general on these podcasts. It does take time. You do need to sort of hone your message and think about your audience. You don't have to tell them everything from start to end, do some little teasers. So yeah, and I know Robert mentioned yesterday as well is about asking for help. People love to help, and if they've got a connection that can help you, you'll be surprised where they are. Just because you come from one area and you've never moved out of that area, if you don't ask, you're never going to find out.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's a good point you mentioned as well, Julie, yesterday. And we talked about it with Robert, and we spoke about it all week, with Kristine, and we spoke with Brent as well, is focus on one area. People, like you said before, people put like everything behind their introduction, and they're trying to throw everything at the wall to make it stick, to make people remember who you are. They'll remember you more if you just focus on one key area from your business, and with repetition, keep putting that across. That builds confidence in talking it to people about. Is a really key point.
I like Brent mentioned about mindset. Be open to sharing and open to learning and open to new opportunities. I mean, we talk about that a lot too. And I found that he talked about building relationships with people And he does that with people he's never met. Online just opened up a whole new world. And as we've talked about also this week, online networking has just become so available now, especially with the pandemic. And that international opportunity that comes up. I mean, there are some areas that I think we should mention and talk about today that you should be aware of. So Kristine mentioned, dialects, which the three of us have discussed with our very different and broad accents. Language, Brent really talked about, the idioms and TLAs, the three-letter acronyms, and then something as simple as a time zone, which can have a big impact too. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I know that when I started online networking, when the pandemic started, I was like, oh, I can now network in America. This is amazing. I'm not going to tell you which group it was, and it didn't quite happen that evening. And I got to speak to the same group in the UK as I did before, but it really opened, opportunities. So yeah, you've got to sort of think about, you might not want to be getting up early in the morning and doing one late at night. You do need to manage that a bit more. So a bit like what Robert mentioned yesterday about turning up to every networking event he could, and I tried a bit of that as well. Also having the camera on quite early on was a bit of a surprise. I was like, oh, I'm not really ready to be sat in front of a camera to talk to these people, but they insisted, so we had to do that. So it's about being ready. And but like what Lee's always mentioned is, why are you there? Why have you gone to that event? So, just because there's, I can't even think how many networking groups there'll be across Eventbrite, across the world, doesn't mean you have to go to every one of them. So it's about targeting your message, who you want to meet there. And just doing it in a bit of a managed way.
I think that's a really good point as well. And I think, Brent spoke about it a lot, and especially with Brent's time zone over in Ontario in Canada. I was speaking to somebody actually just yesterday who I was introduced to from a connection in the United States, who's actually quite close to where Brent is. But for him, it's like early morning and he's still got his day ahead of him. And if you've got an event that's first thing in the morning, it could be like 5 a.m. for many that's overseas. But also is a good point in regards to balance as well, Julie, because you can go to everything you want to go to, but there's no balance, there's no measurement, there's no traction, there's no focus or research on what you want to expect from it. And you could literally be doing everything all through the week, and you've got all your time's gone on an evening. You've got to strike the balance right. You might do it once a week on a late night call to like an international network. But also you've got to be able to commit to it, because you kind of just drop in once and it's just like a drop in the ocean. You've got to be regularly going along, if it's once a month or it's once a week. And I think striking that balance when you know the time zones is a real key thing to put in that one. But I think one of the other parts of it from my thought was, especially when it comes to accents and it comes to, the words that we use are completely different the way other people will hear them. And especially when you've got the slang words that you bring in that you're used to, or the pace or the pitch of your introduction. I learned that from working with the United States, because I had to slow the accent down. Never change the accent, but just slow it down slightly so you're articulating or getting the words across the right way, and making sure if you're in any environment that they really understand you properly, or they're just giving you lip service. I think that's a real key one.
And it's a bit like, I think we've touched on this before, maybe on this podcast, is around the checking understanding, is just don't go in there with all your TLAs, your three-letter acronyms. It's a bit like if you were doing a webinar and you thought you were presenting. I don't know who mentioned this recently and said they got about 20 minutes in and then realized that nobody could see the screen or the presentation. So it's about don't just dive in there, just take your time. And, and we've mentioned before, networking is about building connections. It's not about a sale. It's not about a pitch. So have a conversation with people. You might get your 60 seconds to introduce yourself, but then after that, it's about getting to know people.
Yeah, That's a big thing.
And another point Kristine brought up was sort of strategic networking, where you want to network. It was one of the questions we asked her. And she said in some ways language was something she had to take into account. She needed to have good lines of communication. And in some places, she knew that she would struggle with that. So, I mean, I don't find any embarrassment or confusion if someone said, "Oh, I don't understand. Can you please repeat?" I learnt that my Australian speed talking did not translate at all to someone from Finland. She just couldn't understand me, and she just kept saying, "I just don't. You have to slow down. I just don't understand what you're saying." There was no embarrassment about it. It was just a fact of what was going on. And I think when you're in a new environment or trying to step into somewhere and you have something like that happen, you sometimes go, "Oh no, I can't do it. It's embarrassing. This has gone wrong." I think also we want people to have the confidence to go into a new environment and think, well, this might not happen, or this hasn't gone very well. How can I learn from that? And really grow your understanding about different networks, about different relationships that you can build, because there might be a brilliant relationship there if you have the confidence to step into it. You just got to try to overcome those maybe barriers that you see, but actually other people they need a little bit of clarity, but it's not a big deal.
Here's another one as well, and you've touched on that as well briefly. And every single one of our guests this week, from Kristine to Brent to Robert, they've all spoke about the same thing, is about the research. And you talked about the strategic planning that goes behind it. If you are going to go into an international network, or you're going to go to the United States, you're going to go to Canada, you're going to go to Europe, you're going to drop into the UAE, do your research before delving into that first, and set out the right objectives that you want to achieve. Because the big question that we ask, and we've heard it all this week, is why are you networking for? What's the reasons for doing it? Is it for knowledge? Is it for business? Business will come through the relationships that you build, but it will take time. And it's that strategic planning that you just mentioned there, Louisa, is a really fine point. People normally, and I mean the best respect, and I speak about this quite a lot, they use it as a tick box exercise, networking. And I understand why some people do that, but you're marketing yourself. You want to go in there presenting and being visible for the right reasons, for people to remember you from that first lasting impression that goes in. So I think strategic planning prior to delving into it is really important. You just touched upon that there, Louisa, as well. I think it's really
Lee,
important.
can you give some ideas for people listening and watching about what can they measure? How do they measure some sort of networking event? Because I think for people who are very new to it might not understand what that means.
Yeah, it's actually asked this question today to somebody. We looked at, do you plan or you just turn up? And I think one of the things you need to measure is, number one, how many connections you're making in a week or a month. Actually write it down. You might say, I'm meeting 20 people this week. Well, you've met 20 people, but have you then followed up with everybody? So make sure you've got a real strong follow-up process in place. That means you can then measure what turns into a physical meeting. So you've made the connections, you've followed up, and then it's turned into a physical meeting as well. Now, you might measure those meetings. Out of 20, you might get 10 meetings. But then you're also looking at the business opportunity or the introduction made. So it's nice to record down that. I went to 2 networking events over the last 4 weeks. One was in the United States and one was this. And you're measuring how many people you've met in those connections and how many you followed up with it. Many people forget about that. It's a great question to ask, really, Louisa. Set out your stall, set out the objectives that you want to achieve. And the key part of it is the one-to-one meetings, is the engagement, is that meeting that you have. And that's one of the key ones that's in there. So first of all, number one, set out how many connections you want to make in the month ahead. So you set out the right plan, set out your stall the right way. Number two, make sure that you've got a follow-up process in place that you can follow them all up. Because here's the key thing, that number two, that follow-up part of it, is that if you're not accountable to yourself, you've got to be accountable to the people that you're meeting. And most importantly, if you've promised to introduce somebody, that's now your reputation on the line. If you don't follow it up properly, and you're not keeping in touch with the connections after the follow-up, why have you done it in the first place? And the third part of it is make sure you got the meeting in place, if it's either in person or face-to-face. So there's 3 key things there to remember when you're going into any of your networking internationally or locally. That's in there. Hope that offers a bit there, Louisa.
Yeah, and I think if you are doing internationally, noting where someone is, so what part of, so not just if you're in the US networking there, which state or which, city they're in. I mean, even those little details, when you said, oh, I spoke to someone from Dallas, Texas, and someone says, oh, I know someone from Dallas, Texas, those little things mean the world of difference. But if you haven't asked for it, you might not know how to find that information. Not everyone shares on social media they're those little nuggets of information that you can have just by talking to someone.
Do you know it's as simple as asking, like, what's their hobbies, their interests? And we talk about the plan part of it. So you got those 3 sort of KPIs as such, right? A key performance indicator. Make sure you do.
I was waiting for that. I was like,
woohoo, easy. But again, write out 3 questions you want to ask the connection, as well as another one. I'll just add another little nugget into that one. So identify 3 key areas that you want to find out about them. Yep, location. Number 2, their interests. And number 3, what they're looking for. But the interest part of it is interesting as well, because they might have interest in a book club. They might have interest in motorcycles. Oh, I met somebody, like you said, Dallas, Texas. Oh, they're part of, they're into Harley Davidsons and this, that, and the other. Can I introduce you to them? You've got some mutual ground there. They're into fishing. They're into any type of sport. They've got a favorite football club. Little things like that really make a difference. And keep a note of them. I talk about this called a connect file, and I can delve into that a bit further. But you can have a connect file for the people that you're meeting over the next month. Just write down those little notes. They make a massive difference, Louise, like you just said there. Thanks, Julie.
And also thinking about accents, just because they've got a particular accent doesn't mean they still reside in that country. So don't make assumptions about people. I mean, we know some American, amazing Americans that are here in the Netherlands. So, we don't write off thinking, oh, we can never have that coffee chat. We just need to make it work and synchronize diaries, or pop over to America, of course. But it was interesting about the opportunities as well, about online and in person. You need to leverage those opportunities. It was something on BBC News. I'm going to share it. Another point. Somebody was saying about they were really embarrassed that their father used to hand out business cards everywhere when they're on holiday, hand them out, and it was just like, I think my other half might get a bit annoyed if everywhere I go I'd line up a meeting. But it is about pre-planning and taking opportunities. I mean, we've met somebody through your group who's here in the Netherlands, and I'm going to be there in June. So I'm going to try and meet up with her for the coffee. I've already got that approved by Mr. Taylor, so we're good. So it is about, like Robert mentioned, online is great. So many opportunities that we never imagined. And also, Kristine actually mentioned a platform I've never heard of. Is it Discord channel? So there's even channels, and there's Clubhouse that I keep threatening to put my toe in there, but I'm not sure I will bother with that. So it's just about thinking wider. If I'm traveling, I will be thinking, oh, right, who do I know there? Or ask, as long as I haven't left the house. I know some people are like, you shouldn't be publishing that you're not at home. And it's just like, I get that. But, I think LinkedIn's a bit safe for that. I don't think we have as much worries about that.
Here's a big one. I mean, I've put a post out this week, and I put in a certain group with others that are in there in that same interests. But I'm actually thinking today, we're talking about location. It's actually, I might put it in LinkedIn and just say to everybody, this is where I'm going to be over the next month. I might be playing golf, right? Yeah. But like I said to Robert yesterday, was that I'm going to be in Aberdeen the day before. Yes. Do you fancy grabbing a coffee?
Form an orderly queue. I'll take a ticket, is it? Or is that really old-fashioned?
have a coffee. But what I'm thinking of doing now, I'm going to be in the area. I'll tell people that I'm going to be in Aberdeen on the 12th. Do you want to drop in and see us and have a coffee and a natter? And then on the evening, I'm meeting people in Stonehaven, and I'm meeting others on the golf course the next day. But it's utilizing your time correctly, Julie. That's what you're really going into. And, I was away on holiday last year. I don't mind sharing this. I took my golf clubs with us. I know I talk about golf a lot, right? But it's part and parcel of what I do. But, I went out to Dundee and played, but met a couple of people out there. And you can add that in because it's still an activity. I wasn't working. I was just meeting with them. You don't mind doing that type of thing, but you can be any interest you want, a coffee, a book club, or whatever it might be that you want to meet up and, gel on that side.
Yeah. I was going to say, I loved one thing that Kristine said in her points was, get a mentor or someone that you can learn from, someone already in the network, or have the right people around you to make the experience better. And I think when you start out, it can feel quite solitary. It can feel lonely. But as Lee's saying, if you take your interest and use them as an opportunity to meet people, it should feel quite seamless. You have a conversation with someone. You're not losing anything by having a chat and saying, oh, yes, my business is this. It can break the ice. I mean, I joined a chorus in the Netherlands, and, I've now got 50 wonderful women around me who support me and understand that I do not speak Dutch. But for me, it's a lovely place. But they also talk about Blue Ninja. I mean, my director sometimes calls me Blue Ninja. I love it. It makes my participation all that more interactive. And I'm happy to I help around with a little bit for them from my business side. But it's that building relationships, and you never know where it could take you, wherever you are in the world.
That's what I was just going to mention about your chorus, and it's just like you just never know where you're going to network. Obviously, we know that Lee networks on the golf course, and I said golf field. Then I've obviously not been out on the golf field at all ever. So
the hunters gatherers, I think.
I'm too busy hunting and gathering out in the field. So and it's the same. I think we've mentioned it before as well at our business centre. People have met us but can't necessarily remember our names, but they just shout out Ninja, and I was just like, you could be shouted and pointed out wherever it is. That's absolutely fine with us. So it's about being memorable in whichever way that could be.
Leave a lasting impression. But there's another thing I want to bring in. It's great what Kristine was talking about, like the circle of the tribe, the people that you have around you. Keep them close. What a lot of people do in network, and I'll share this one as a little pointer, right? They're part of it and they step out of it. And then they're moving to something else, and they've left those relationships behind. Sort of. They're sort of broken it slightly, but they can still dip in and out when they want to. There's a little bit of consistency because you're building that group that's around you, that sort of support structure. And that support structure, you should never burn a bridge when you move on to other things. You should always keep connected to them in some way, shape, or form. And many people do that. They move from the network to network to network, but forget about the people who've made in the last, that's where that measurement comes from. But that's where you build up the most strongest relationships. And I think Brent spoke about this. It's less about the opportunity that we're finding. It's about, he networks for knowledge. He networks for information to give him support. It's given him ideas. It's inspired him to create a podcast channel. That's came from what he's been part of.
I loved him talking about his passion project. He was so invested in helping others. Like that's his whole network platform for his passion project is how can I help a group of people who are new to Canada find their feet? And I loved the way that he spoke, with such passion about his passion project.
Yeah.
And it's thinking differently about networking too, isn't it? His identity behind networking is, as you say, to learn, to find out more about other people and to use that as a skill. I think that's a wonderful way to approach it.
Yeah, I mean that's same as Louisa and I's passion project, but we're just trying to still capture those people. So for us, it's about entrepreneurs, small businesses like ourselves. We started in our own city, but now we've brought it Netherlands wide, and we also help people that want to start a business. We've got a course on that on our website, but it's trying to capture those people because they tend to come. I wouldn't say they're not the decision maker of the move, but they are supporting the person who's come in with the amazing job. So they're just sort of sat there going, right, what am I going to do with myself now? What do I want to be when I grow up? And it's trying to, if we can get into find those people, we can support them. So it's all about finding the people you want to help because you've been there in that situation as well.
Yeah. I think when you give first and you offer that support, I mean, many people go into networking for different reasons. Business relationships are what it's all about. So they'll go into that and they'll start to cultivate. Sorry to bring that word in there for you, Julie, right? They start to cultivate their areas. They start to cultivate where their industry is. But I think it's so important that you're keeping on track of what you want to achieve from it. And predominantly networking is just literally helping people. It's connecting the dots. It's not rocket science. And if you're going in there to sell to the room, yeah, you might get some. But if you go in there to help people first, I'll guarantee you one thing, it'll open up so many more doors for you because people will talk about what you're doing with that passion project or something that really ignites the taper as such. Yeah.
And it's never too old to start either. If you're retired and you would like to learn more about Australia, reach out to me and I'll introduce you to some people and get the conversation started. There's nothing wrong with asking that question to someone and just going, oh, I'm really interested in that. Can you connect me with someone? Whatever walk of life you're on, that outreach, that little step forward to learn something about someone else can grow roots.
Yeah.
It makes me think of where we go networking on a Thursday evening sometimes. When you go there in person, you get a number after your name on the sticker. And I spotted this gal, a little bit older guy, and he was just like, I said to one of the ladies that run the event, I went, he's got 107 after his name. Why is it? And he was like, yeah, he's been 107. I was like, I've totally got to meet him. So we both met him. He knows so much and so many people.
He's
so
lovely.
It's just like, be proud of those extensive networks and extensive experience in years. And don't shy away. Go out and help people. We've got somebody that also feeds it back on our newsletter. We really appreciate that as well.
I would love it.
Somebody's reading it.
Yeah.
So but I think, have we got anything else you want to share today? Otherwise, I think that just about wraps it up for the week.
I think we've covered a lot of stuff there.
Yeah. Okay. We'll be back next month, and we hope you join us again. Please do pop in the comments your own feedback on the social media feeds. Next month, we'll have 3 new guests joining us on Network Now from the 23rd to the 27th of May, discussing the topic, the mindset of networking. So look out for that on our social media channels.
Yeah, looking forward to it very much. Make sure you're also following us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and subscribe to YouTube on the Revitalize and Blue Ninja social media platforms. We'd really appreciate it if you can like and subscribe to Network Now. Just gives us some visibility to others. So if you're listening on Spotify, please like us. Check out the podcast Network Now on Anchor FM and Spotify for other great conversations.
And just comes to the end to really me to say thank you very much to every single one of you who's listened in and also made some comments this week over the last few days with Network Now. Thank you so much for joining us. Myself, Louisa, and Julie wish you all the very best for the weekend that is just around the corner. Enjoy yourselves, everybody. We'll see you again in May. Stay tuned. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.